Welcome back. Thanks for joining me in part 2 of our Intro to Extreme Long Range. Now, if you missed part 1, I'd encourage you to go back and check it out because we're going to use the content from that video to build on in part 2. So in part 1, just a quick recap, we looked at rifles, we looked at caliber, hand loading targets, as well as optics and mounts. Now, in part 2, I want to take just a handful of minutes here and we'll talk about the supporting gear. So supporting gear is a crucial piece of the puzzle that I think often gets overlooked. Everyone gravitates toward rifles and calibers and all that kind of stuff because that's where the fun is at. That's something that you can go to the reloading room and you can make a difference that's tangible, that you can see down range. But this second part here, supporting gear, there's a lot of pieces of supporting gear that are crucial to get into really long range shooting, but definitely extreme long range shooting. So if you'd join me here for the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about things like laser rangefinders, chronographs, bubble levels versus electronic levels, and then definitely targets. Targets are very important. So that's what we got on deck here for you. Don't forget, if you like this kind of content, please hit me with a subscribe or a like. Check me on Instagram at Mountains Mullets America. It's a great place for us to engage in conversation and me to give you a sneak peek at what's coming. So without further ado, let's move into part 2 of this series and take a look at supporting gear for extreme long range shooting. So we've talked about the rifle, our caliber choice, and our optic. What else goes with it? Well, as you saw in the video there at 100 yards, one of the most important pieces of gear is a chronograph. So personally, this is my magneto speed that I've been using for years. It clamps on the end of the barrel here. There's other really good options out there with the lab radar. Whatever your choice of chronograph is, make sure you've got one. You can't dial your loads in. You can't effectively figure out your dope without a good chronograph. So these magneto speeds are debated because they go on the barrel, or at least mine mounts on the barrel. It changes your point of impact. Okay, sure. On a big rifle like this, it's not the end of the world, but you gotta have a really good chronograph. So I've had this thing a long time. It works really well. Get yourself a chronograph, invest in that. Next up, this is part of the rifle gear, but this is a level or an anti-cant device. This is the long range arms send it level. It's electronic. Also in the back of my spur mount is a bubble level. You gotta have an anti-cant device. When you get out there at distance, any little bit of cant in that rifle will be error in your shot that you either can't correct for or it won't be consistent. The reason I like this send it level and it's electronic is it's more sensitive than a bubble. So I'm able to see more error in my cant with this send it level than I can with a bubble, just trying to get it between the lines. So sure, a bubble's great. It's better than nothing, but I'd encourage you, if you're getting to the long range game, extreme long range, get something like this send it level. It's definitely worth the money. Now next up, a critical piece of gear. We've got to know how far we're shooting. So invest in a nice rangefinder. So for me, this is the SIG BDX 3K rangefinder. It works well. It's not great. It advertises like a 3,000 yard range. I can't remember the numbers on a reflective target. And then on other targets, it's much closer. But we're going to roll some footage in just a second, and I'll show you exactly how effective I can be with this rangefinder. This thing's not cheap by any means. It's a fairly expensive rangefinder, but as you'll see in the video, it's advertised at 3,000 yards. Definitely doesn't do it when I'm trying to range my target. So for me, when I get out to extreme distances, I have to use this rangefinder and range back to the pickup. So that said, let's take a look just quickly using this extreme long range rangefinder, and then we'll move into the shooting. All right, guys, we're at our shooting position looking out at our targets. You're looking through the SIG 3K BDX rangefinder, pointed at a full-size IPSC right here, trying to measure. No reading. 30-inch circle. Again, no reading. So with this rangefinder, I'll have to run down there and aim back at the truck to get a range. Here we are down at the full-size IPSC. Again, we'll shoot back to the truck. $18.20. All right, so I'm currently down here at the 30-inch round circle target. And because I can't hit it from the pickup, I have to shoot back to the pickup. So we're right at 2,307 yards. 2,309. So I'll be laying just in front of the pickup, so we're probably actually about 2,300 yards to here. All right, I think one of the most important things that gets overlooked when it comes to shooting extreme long range is what is your target? Because your target that you're using is going to drive a lot of the requirements when it comes to accuracy needs of your rifle, as well as velocity consistency. So when I'm choosing targets, I got a couple here that I like to shoot at extreme distances, but I want to choose those to where they are large enough that I can hit them, because that's what we're here for. You want to make sure you can hit the target. That's how we have fun. But also they're small enough to be a challenge. And I can promise you, both of these targets are a challenge when you get out to extreme distances. So what I'm typically shooting at distance would be this full-size IPSC right here, 18 by 30. So it's 30 inches tall, 18 inches wide. This thing is a great target from about, I don't know, 1,400 yards, all the way out to about 1,800. Very challenging because of the width as you approach the mile mark. So this thing's 18 inches wide. Well, that's 1 MOA at a mile. And there's a lot of things the wind can do to your bullet a mile down range. So this thing is not what I started shooting extreme long range at. When I first got into extreme long range, what I got was this 30-inch circle. And I can promise you, this is an awesome target if you're just getting into extreme long range. A 30-inch circle, sure, it sounds pretty big, and it is a pretty big target, but I can promise you, this target at a mile is very challenging for someone new to extreme long range. So I started out shooting at this, and I realized very quickly I didn't have the skills or the ability to have fun on this target. So that's why I had to move to this one. I would encourage you, if you're getting into extreme long range for the first time, something like the 30-inch circle is great. Take a look here. What I don't get into, I see a lot of times online, folks are shooting giant targets. They're shooting 4 foot by 4 foot squares at a mile, or they're shooting 6 foot by 6 foot squares further than that. And to me, that's not the point of this. I like a little bit more accuracy. I like a little bit more of a challenge, because if you get good at this target, if you start to get consistent at this at a mile, which I felt like I'm there, set this up, and this will humble you really quick, especially at a mile, reading your wind. So if there's a takeaway, a challenging target that's big enough to hit. And as you start to feel good about your skills, push them out further, and I can guarantee you it'll be a challenge again. So in my video here in a little while, we're going to shoot both of these. We're going to shoot this one at 1,820, and we're going to shoot this one at 2,310, I believe it is. The other really cool thing or important I would encourage you is to pick up one of these MagnetoSpeed T1000 hit indicator lights. These things, they're not cheap, but they are absolutely awesome for spotting your hits at distance. I can promise you, when you get out at distance and you get mirage or you get shadows or whatever, it's going to be a challenge to see some of these bullets hit these plates, depending on where you hit them. If you hit them square and they don't spin, if you're shooting a solid copper bullet and it doesn't make this big splash, the solid coppers will just leave a little mark. You won't know you hit it. It'll be hard to hear. It's so delayed. I would encourage you to invest in one of these lights. I think this is one of the best investments I made when it came to extreme long range shooting. So the other thing, it might be cheating, but I hang a little bit of plastic tape on my targets to get an idea of what the wind is doing. Doesn't mean I hit them every time, but it at least gives me an idea of which direction and what the wind is doing at different points downrange. So that said, that's a little bit of a target overview. So as you can see, supporting gear is extremely important when it comes to shooting long range, and definitely extreme long range. Things like a laser rangefinder, we've got to know exactly how far it is to the target. Anti-cant device, we've got to be able to make sure this rifle is perfectly vertical before we take our shots. But the big one for me is our target. So something I didn't really hit on in the video, we'll see it in part 3, but our target size definitely is going to impact our hit percent, but not in the way that you might think. So if you think back to part 1, my velocity extreme spread was 25 feet per second. Now I haven't run the numbers on this exactly, but what you can do, take that spread, plug in the extreme upper and lower limits to your ballistics calculator at the distance you want to shoot. And then that will give you a spread in inches that you can expect from just error in your velocity. So for instance, and again, I haven't run these numbers, but my 25 feet per second spread might equate to something like a 60-inch vertical spread at the target that is just a factor of the velocity that I'm putting out, my velocity consistency. Now, if I'm shooting a 30-inch tall target with a 60-inch spread, that means it's going to be really hard to connect. And we'll see in part 3 what this actually looks like downrange for me. But that's something to think about. That's why all this works together. So the tighter you can get on your velocity spread, that means the tighter your vertical spread is of your impacts at distance. And that means you could maybe shoot a smaller target, or if you're like me and you're a little bit wide on your spread, maybe you need a little bit taller target. So that's something, I don't think I exactly hit that on the target section of this, but it's very important to note. So if you enjoyed this, I'd encourage you, stick around for part 3. So in part 3, I'm gonna show you what it actually looks like live fire. So I'm gonna stretch out this rifle in my package and my gear at 1,820 yards, as well as 2310. I'm going to give you a look at how often can I connect at those distances with this gear. So that said, if you enjoyed this, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. And then also, I'm really trying to grow this channel into something cool, and it's your interaction that helps me do that. So if you like the video, hit the thumbs up there, give it a like, give it a comment. I'd love to hear, did I miss any gear? Or is any of the gear I'm using maybe subpar? Is there something I'm missing that could help improve my shooting? I'm definitely no expert. I'm just trying to put together a video series here to summarize my experience so far. So if you've got some pointers, hit me with them. I would love to hear them. So that said, if you haven't seen part 1, hit that and stick around for part 3. It's going to be really awesome.